Now that you have your body paragraphs drafted, we need to go back and add what I call like the buns to the sandwich. You need your introduction and you need your conclusion. So introductions, you should have learned this in elementary school. They have three main jobs. The first job is to grab the reader's attention by using a hook. So if you can't capture or make your reader want to read more in those first couple sentences, then we're going to have some problems. You want to give just a little bit of background information about your topic. It's just one or two sentences at the maximum. You're not giving them your entire topic or your entire research that you did. You're just telling them a little bit about it so they know what's going to go on. And then the third thing is for you to tell your reader what your writing is going to be about. And as you get a little older and more sophisticated in your writing, we might call that, if it's an argument, your claim, or in other types of informational writing, we would call that your thesis statement. So let's go back and talk about how you can hook your reader. There's lots of ways, and if you pick up any magazine or any book and read the first paragraph, you'll see lots of different ways that writers try to do this. I'm going to share with you just a couple of ones that I know of that I think are really easy and straightforward to use and would work well with the kind of writing that we are going to do, that we're doing right now. So the first one, this is kind of my go-to when I'm not sure what to do, and this is start by asking your reader a question. So think about the topic that you're writing about. What's a question that you could ask your reader that would draw them in? I'm writing about the polar ice caps, and they're melting, and because they're melting, like lots of penguins and polar bears, they're dying, they're losing their home, they're starving. So I decided to start with a question to make it like a little more relatable to people. What if you woke up one day to discover that your home was completely destroyed? So that's my hook. Then notice I've layered my background. This is becoming a more common problem for the polar bears and penguins in the poles, what's happening to their homes, and then here's my part where I'm going to tell you what my writing is going to be about. The giant polar ice sheets that these animals call home are disappearing and causing problems for many animals. So my reader knows after reading this that the rest of my paper is going to be about the polar ice sheets disappearing and the problems that it's causing for different animals. Notice that I did not say, "Hi, my name is Mrs. Taylor, and in my paper I am going to tell you about polar ice sheets and how they are melting." You should never in sixth grade ever include that in your introduction. So starting with the question is one way that you could do that. Another way that you could hook your reader, and this is another one that I know is easy for sixth graders to use, is start by asking your reader to imagine if. Like imagine something related to your topic. And so if you take a look, here is my example on my same topic. Here's another way that I could have started my paper. Imagine if you go out to hunt one day and you return to find that your home has disappeared into the cold waters of the ocean. So there's my hook. Unfortunately, this is becoming a common problem for the polar bears and penguins in the pools. What's happening to their home? There's my background. The giant polar ice sheets that these animals call home are disappearing and causing problems for many animals. And there's my piece where I'm telling them what the rest of my writing is going to be about. So we have a question, we have imagine if. Another popular or common way that kids like to start or hook their readers is start with something that's like shocking or surprising. And so this is probably going to come from the research that you did. So when I was doing research, I found that over the last 5 years, polar bear population has reduced by like cut in half. So that's what I decided to start with for my shocking fact. Over the last 5 years, the polar bear population has been reduced by 50%. And then I go on to give a little bit of background, and then there's what I'm going to be writing about. So we have learned a question, imagine if, you've learned a shocking fact. My other favorite one is I love using onomatopoeia because it makes such an impact on the reader. So I know this sounds a little bit weird. I had to stop and think about polar ice caps and what sounds they might make as they're breaking apart and as they're melting, and what kind of onomatopoeia I could use for that. So I used crunch, crack, splash. That's the sound of a polar ice cap melting, breaking off into the ocean. And then here's my little background information. And then I have my thesis, what I'm going to be writing about. The other method that I love is one that was invented by a student that I had a few years ago. He's a ninth grader now, and we call it the Joey because his name was Joey. And he started his introduction or his hooks with these really brilliant one-word sentences. And I know some of you are going to be freaked out by that and said, my teacher said that a sentence has to have this many words in it, or it has to have a subject and a predicate. But sometimes there's really power in having just one-word sentences. And so here's an example of what that might look like for mine. Hungry, scared, dying. So see how now as a reader, you're like, what's hungry, scared, and dying? Like, you want to know what's going on. It's really good at hooking the reader in. That's what's happening to the animals in the Arctic. Polar bears and other Arctic animals, blah, blah, blah. There's my background, and then there's my what I'm going to be writing about. So just to review, there are 3 parts of an introduction. There's the hook, and so here's my hook. You give some background knowledge. Here's what I use for my background, and then what I'm writing about. Here's this. You smush that all together, and you've got a great introduction. So underneath here on this sheet, and you have a copy of this through Schoology, I'm going to ask you to go ahead and plan your introduction. What hook method are you going to try? What pieces of background information are you going to include? And how are you going to tell your reader what you're writing about? Remember, without saying, hello, my name is, and I hope you like my paper. So go ahead and open your document. Play around. You might try 2 or 3 different methods before you find one that you like. You might try a couple and ask a partner or somebody at home which one they like better. And then once you have planned your introduction, I'm going to ask you to go back to your draft where we just wrote those body paragraphs, and go ahead at the top of your page, because the introduction is your first paragraph, and go ahead and put your introduction into your body paragraphs. And then when you're done, come back to here and let's talk about the conclusion. Conclusions are always hard for kids to write, and I'll tell you they're really hard for me to write too, because the conclusion's job is to sum up what the writing is about. And last year I had a student help me figure out an amazing strategy for summarizing. So a lot of times in elementary school they teach you to summarize a text by using this little sentence starter. Somebody wanted, but, so, then. And it occurred to me that this is a really good strategy for writing a conclusion, since your conclusion is summing up your paragraph. So here's what it might look like. Somebody wanted is my Arctic animals wanted a safe place to raise their young and hunt for food, but the greenhouse effect has warmed the Earth's atmosphere, so the polar ice sheets that these animals call home have started to disappear. Then the melting ice caused many problems for Arctic animals and affected people hundreds of miles away. Is this the only way that you can write a conclusion? Absolutely not. You are welcome to experiment and try your own ways. And then do you notice how I didn't say, okay, that's it, I hope you learned a lot, or, again, my name is Mrs. Taylor, thanks for reading my paper, I hoped you liked it. We don't do that in 6th grade. If you're struggling with a conclusion, try this somebody wanted, but, so, then method, because I guarantee you it will work for any and every single topic. Go ahead and add a conclusion to your draft, and by the time that you're finished with all of your work today, you should have a completed first draft that has an introduction, some body paragraphs, at least 3, and then you have your conclusion summing it up.